I got a call. It was from WBBM. And they said, we are going to do a show for the affiliate members of the network here in Chicago. We want to do a dramatic show. We want to show how to sell and what kind of products we have to sell. And we would like to cast you as the station rep here at WBBM. Would you like to do the part? This would be fun to do. So I went in, and we did the show. 2 days later, Al Bland, who was the program director at BBM, called me and said, would you like to join the stable? And the next 15 years of my life were devoted to what I did on WBBM. I was with the greatest people in the world. The John Harringtons, the Beatty Flynn's, on and on through all the musicians. Billy Leach is here, Johnny George and Fritz the King's Jesters. We had live music, everything was live. It was called the Showmanship Station. And it was the high point of my life. Nothing before or nothing after has been as much fun for me in broadcasting as my 15 years on WBBM. And I can tell you this, in 15 years, I never once asked what a rating was on a show I did. Not once. I didn't care. Our challenge from management down, from H. Leslie Atlas, the smartest man in radio I never knew, was to do a good show. I admired the Paul Gibsons. He was impossible, but he was impossibly genius. There I met Jim, I met Billy, I met all the people who have given me such personal pleasure. I went into record shows there, live shows. We did a show called Music Wagon, which was a live show in the morning. And there, one of my dear old buddies, Joe Foss, was our announcer. And one day I was in my office and they called me and said, Mal, would you come in and replace Joe? And Joe had had a stroke. And those of you who know Joe knew what a gentleman he was, what a fine man he was, and how grieved we all were that a stroke could hit a man in our business exactly where it hit him in his ability to be an announcer. We had a staff of people there who could do anything. And it went on for a long time into the 60s when I began to get a little antsy, a little itchy. I had done just about everything, and I was wondering, now I'm not too far from 50. Suppose CBS hits its computer button and says, get rid of everybody over 50. I don't know, I'm not too comfortable with that. So, at about that time, I started thinking about owning a radio station. One of my friends is a lawyer, and one of his friends is a lawyer, and they cornered me on repeated occasions and said, Mal, as high-priced talent, you'll never save $1. You got to get on the other side. You got to own the property. So my wife and I started thinking about it. I told you earlier, my wife was more talented than I. She was a wonderful actress, a wonderful writer. She gave up everything of her own career desires to back me up. By this time, in the late 60s, she was at the point, and our kids were at the point where I wanted her back in the business. We started doing some shows together, and we thought, well, maybe we ought to buy a little mom and pop station and put it together. We had a survey made, and they said, buy something close. At that point, Art Thorson and two friends had put together a little station in Crystal Lake. We made an offer on the station, and in 1969, after all my friends on Michigan Avenue said, Belair's, you are crazy. No one leaves WBBM, a 50,000-watt powerhouse, to go and buy a 500-watt station part-time in Podunk Center. We did it anyway. My stomach did gyrations for a long time. It worked. It worked very nicely. We bought another station in Woodstock, and it was to become my annuity that pays my parking bill down here in this garage. It's $15. I kept the station in 1971. One of our daughters had been working in Ireland, and my wife and I had decided when we get old, we ought to have a place to go to, and we didn't really think much of California or Florida or whatever. So we thought, well, maybe Ireland is the place. We went over to Ireland, we browsed around there, and we ended up buying a home out on the Shannon River, an old cut stone, 150-year-old manor house, and we kept it until last week. We sold it last week. We had 24 wonderful years in Ireland, and this has not been without trauma. It's like losing one of your own children, but we felt that it was time. By the way, I lost my first wife in 1975. She was diagnosed to have cancer. She lasted 1 year. She got to enjoy her home in Ireland. She was the Irish side of the family. My roots are Scottish. She loved that house on the Shannon River. And she loved being a part of the radio station with me, and we worked together, and we built 2 darn good stations. In 1981, Bill O'Donnell, who was the head man at BBM, to whom I tendered my resignation, called me and said, "Mal, you said you wanted to keep the stations about 10 years. It's about 10 years. What about it?" And I said, "Yeah, I would sell 10 years. It wasn't as much fun once Joe was gone." I had remarried by that time. Lovely lady. I said, "Okay, well, what do you got?" And he said, "Well, got a man named Wallace Carroll who heads up Katy Industries, a conglomerate. The only thing he doesn't own is a radio station." And I said, "Well, can we get together?" And he said, "Yeah." And he came out to our house on the day after Memorial Day, sat down at our card table, and in exactly 10 minutes I sold him 2 radio stations. We had a bottle of wine, and there we were. I stayed on for 4 years part-time, just as talent, and my current wife, a lovely lady who was friends of ours in Woodstock and so forth and on, we got together, we're married, and this November we'll be married 20 years. 34 and 24 is 54 years of marriage. We'd gone down to Mexico on a vacation, came back, and at the radio station, the then general manager said, "Mal, you can play any kind of music you want, only make it country western." I retired. I still do certain things just to keep my brain from turning to jelly. I don't go out anymore and pound the streets as I